Hi, I'm Jilly G. Welcome to my kitchen. Today I'm going to show you my pumpkin cream cheese bread. So when fall is getting close and everything pumpkin spice is coming out, this is a really good recipe. In fact, sometimes I make this recipe year round. But first thing we're going to do is I have two 9x5 loaf pans here. This is a double batch that I'm doing today, but in the description box I'll give you the recipe for a single batch. So two pans, and I have a little piece of butter in here. I'm just going to grease both of my pans. And if your butter is firm enough in just that little cube, greases it really well. Just make sure to get the corners. And I ended up using a little piece of paper towel because my butter was really soft. Now that our two pans are ready to go, set those aside. So I have 4 eggs here. We're gonna put 2 in the main batter and then separate the other 2 and save the whites in this bowl. And I've showed you before how I separate egg yolks from the whites. And put your egg white in this bowl. So there's our 2 egg whites, and now just 2 eggs in with our yolks. Clean up our mess. In the bowl with our 2 egg whites, we're going to put vanilla, and I have about 2 tablespoons of maple syrup and an 8-ounce package of cream cheese, whole fat. And it's room temperature, as you want everything to be. And the reason I always say room temperature is everything mixes up better when it's at room temperature. So in the bowl with our egg whites. Don't spill your egg whites outside of your bowl. Cream cheese, egg whites, about 2 teaspoons of vanilla, and 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. You could use honey or white sugar, but I'm using maple syrup because I'm using maple syrup for the main batter part, and it all just goes together. So get your mixer, and we're just going to mix this till it's really smooth. And I said mix it till it's really smooth, but mine's a little chunky, and I don't mind. Give your bowl a good scrape. Make sure there's nothing hanging out on the bottom here. And set that aside. So in the bowl with our 2 eggs and 2 egg yolks, we are going to add let's mix the dry ingredients first. In this bowl, I have 4 cups of my gluten-free flour mix, and I'll link that video below in the description. And here is our other spices and other things. So in this bowl I have 2 teaspoons of baking powder, a half a teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of salt, 3 teaspoons of cinnamon, 2 teaspoons of ginger, and 1 teaspoon of cloves. All in here, and just mix this till it's nice and combined. If you have pumpkin pie spice, you could use that instead of measuring out the separate spices. And it would be about 6 teaspoons of your pumpkin pie spice. And I didn't mention I've got the oven preheated to 350. So set that aside. Now for our wet ingredients. 2 eggs, 2 egg yolks, 2 cups of maple syrup, 15-ounce can of pumpkin, not pumpkin pie filling, just plain pumpkin. And 6 tablespoons of butter that I've got cut up. It's pretty soft, but I'm gonna melt it in the microwave just till it's barely melted. So I'm gonna give our eggs a mix. And our butter's looking pretty good. So just let that cool off for a minute. Add in our 2 cups of maple syrup. And I know it seems like a lot of maple syrup, but this recipe, if you use sugar, it calls for about 2.5 cups of brown sugar, or 2 1/4 cups of brown sugar, something like that. I'll put the equivalent to sugar below. And this is real maple syrup, not maple flavored syrup. And if you don't like maple syrup or don't have it, you could use coconut sugar, again brown sugar, or honey would work well as well. So mix your maple syrup and your eggs. And now add in your pumpkin. And just give this a mix. And now our 6 tablespoons of softened butter, all in one. And mix this till it's really combined. And if it starts to separate a little bit like this, that's okay. It will all come together when we add in the flour. So bring over your flour mix. We're gonna go a little bit at a time. And if you don't wanna use butter in this, you could use oil, 6 tablespoons of oil, vegetable oil, or even coconut oil. But I like the butter. So a little bit at a time, or about half. That's about half. And just mix this till it's all mixed together. Now for the rest of the flour, and I'm going to use the spatula instead of the whisk. Scraping the bowl as you go. Making sure nothing's on the bottom. No big pockets of flour. That looks good. Move that aside. Bring back our loaf pans. You can also do this in cupcake liners and they work really well too. So what we're gonna do is divide this batter evenly between these 2 pans. And I just eyeball it. And I'm just spreading it out just to get it started so I can see how much is in each pan to make it even. And I'm not worried if it's smooth on the top. I'm more just pushing it into the corners to make sure that it's all the way to the edges. Get all of it off of there. And again, don't worry if it's flat. So bring back our topping. Just a regular butter knife. Scrape off your spatula. And again, same thing. We're just gonna eyeball the cream cheese topping to go evenly on top of these. Give it a mix. And just kind of line it down the middle. And it doesn't have to be perfect, mostly just so I can tell that I've got even amounts in both. And once you're happy with what they look like, take your butter knife and we're just gonna swirl into this bottom layer. You don't wanna go all the way to the bottom. Mostly just kind of mixing in the top, and I just kind of turn it over and swirl it through. Give it that marbled look. And now move on to our next one here. But make sure to keep it fairly level. I mean, it doesn't have to be flat, but fairly level so it's not one side's bigger than the other. Use your spatula, scrape off your knife. So we'll bake these in the oven, again at 350, for about an hour. I'll check them at an hour. You want to take a toothpick and when it comes out clean, they're done. So it may or may not go a little bit more than an hour. So into the oven. And I'll show you what they look like when they're finished. They look pretty good. They went for about an hour. As you saw, I was checking them with a toothpick. So I'm gonna let these cool in the pan for about 10 minutes and then we'll take them out of the pan. But just move these aside. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit. This is just one of my many, many cookbooks. So in the beginning, I never used to write in my cookbooks, and I started writing in them, making little notes here and there, and then it progressed to all kinds of little papers. And then when I went gluten-free, even more papers, because I would write down my conversions and how it worked and if it didn't work and if it was terrible and maybe what to try next time. All of my cookbooks look like this. Little notes, more little notes. And it becomes a problem when you have so many little pieces of paper and they fall out. But it's my system that works. This recipe is a double batch, as I mentioned, so 2 loaf pans. If you ever wanted to make it for holidays and gift giving, a double batch of this recipe makes 6 of these little ones. and 3 of this size. So smaller, but you can get 3 out of here. They might not rise as much, but you can still get 3 out of this size, and again 6 out of this size for just a double batch. And these are perfect for just giving away. You just wrap it in some plastic wrap and put a ribbon on it, and you're good to go. I encourage you to do this with all of your recipes, and especially with your gluten-free baking. So many times when I refer back to a recipe, it's very helpful, and especially when I started converting sugars into different sugars, this has been really helpful too. So I just thought I'd give you that little tidbit. I'm gonna let these cool off for about 10 minutes in the pan, and then we'll take it out of the pan, let it cool a few more minutes, and then we'll cut into it. So after about 10 minutes, we can turn this out. So the pan's still a little bit hot, so be careful. Now they just have to cool off the rest of the way till we can cut into it. So my bread's been cooling for about 20 minutes. It's still a little bit warm, but that's all right. So just move both of those aside. Bring over our cutting board. And let's see what it looks like on the inside. Looks pretty good. It's still a little bit warm. I don't know about you. I always like the ends. I know other people don't like them, but I like them. Let's give this a bite. It's really good. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, let me know, and we'll see you on the next one.